Tonight's meditation, this is the last Thursday of the month. This is the long meditation. I always do a short talk and a long meditation. So I'll talk for about 10, 15 minutes and then we'll meditate for the rest. And I was thinking today about what I wanted to talk about, and I always have lots of ideas swirling around in my mind, but I settled on the legend of Bodhidharma because I haven't given a meditation talk about a martial arts teacher for a long time. And Bodhidharma is the original, the first martial arts teacher. So we have a statue of him who he sits up there and overlooks the dojo with his stern face. We have a picture of him on the other side of the wall as well. And their Chinese martial arts is steeped in legend. All of the stories for sure are based in some amount of fact and for sure are mostly made up as well, but they always have some kind of a lesson behind them. So I'll talk a little bit, I'll read a little bit from this book, Zen Flesh, Zen Bones, which is all about the philosophy that Bodhidharma started. But I want to talk about some of the legends of Bodhidharma. So Bodhidharma was alive around 1,500 years ago, and he was a revered monk, a Buddhist monk who came from India to China. And that's where the legends start. Some of the legends say that Bodhidharma floated over on a cloud. And you can imagine what kind of skill you have to be able to float on a cloud. The next most ludicrous explanation is he floated down the Yangtze River on a reed, just on a piece of grass. He's got incredible balance, Bodhidharma. Some people say that he just walked from India to China. That's probably a little bit more realistic. Maybe he took a horse. We don't know. I wasn't there. But they say that he arrived at the emperor's palace. And I think this was before China, as we know it, was a unified country. So it was probably one of several rulers there. But he arrived, and this emperor was very eagerly awaiting Bodhidharma's arrival because he wanted to show Bodhidharma all of the great stuff that he had done in the name of Buddhism. And so he's showing him, look at all these temples that I've built, and look at all these people who come and practice. And he said, basically, surely I've earned my way into heaven with all of this stuff, right? And Bodhidharma said, no, you haven't. And the emperor didn't like that answer. So he kicked him out of the temple, and Bodhidharma went wandering around the countryside in China until he came to the temple in the woods, Shaolin Temple. And most of you have heard of this temple. It's a very famous temple. Shaolin, it's a temple where I visited, where my Sifu went and practiced multiple times. And it is a very cool place that has all kinds of its own stories and legends. And many of them have to do with Bodhidharma. Now, some people say, well, the historical evidence of Bodhidharma actually being at Shaolin Temple is a little bit dubious. It's possible that he wasn't there, but the stories all say he was, so that's what we're going with. Bodhidharma, as the legend goes, arrived at Shaolin Temple, and he saw that the monks needed a little bit of help. One of the stories goes like this. He saw the monks meditating in the meditation hall in the zendo, and they were just falling asleep during their meditation. And some of them were out of shape. They were getting fat, even though they didn't have a lot to eat. They just ate everything they could find, apparently. And all they would do, the monks, would be to meditate and to copy sutras. They're just writing all day long. And as you can imagine, it doesn't make for a super exciting life, nor does it lead to a very energized kind of way of being. So Bodhidharma saw this and he decided, I'm going to come up with a form of exercise that will also double as a way for these monks to protect themselves against the roaming bandits, because these groups of ruffians would come up to the temple and they beat up the monks or kill them and steal their stuff. And Bodhidharma thought, we got to come up with a way of doing this. Now, as you can imagine, it's a very convenient thing to have all of these legends passed around about your temple where everyone is the most deadly fighters because they've got all these secret kung fu techniques. But the stuff that started off that Bodhidharma taught was super basic, rudimentary stuff. It's like standing in a horse stance like this. It's like standing in this position, like a push. Maybe if you were lucky, he let you punch like this. And then that eventually turned into the style of Kung Fu, the many styles, and the other forms of martial arts that came from Kung Fu. So this is one of the stories of Bodhidharma at Shaolin. Another story is when he got there, some of the monks weren't interested in what he had to say. So he said, I'm just going to sit up in this cave at the top of this mountain. And if people want to come learn from me, okay. They say he sat for 9 years in this cave in meditation. They say that his focus was so strong that his eyes put a hole in the wall of the cave. Another story says that he got so fed up with dozing off during meditation that he took a knife and cut off his eyelids. And where his eyelids hit the ground, tea trees sprouted. And so then this was the legend of how we can use tea to keep ourselves awake during meditation practice. Another one of the stories concerns Bodhidharma's successor. So the successor is named, he's got two different names. There's the Chinese and the Japanese version, I think. It's Eka or Huke. And there's a story where this monk came to the cave to beg Bodhidharma to teach him. And Bodhidharma made him stand outside in the snow, and he stood out there for days. And he actually, I've got this story. I'm going to read it. Bodhidharma sits facing the wall. His future successor stands in the snow and presents his severed arm to Bodhidharma. He cries, "My mind is not pacified. Master, pacify my mind." Bodhidharma says, "If you bring me that mind, I will pacify it for you." The successor says, "When I search my mind, I cannot hold it." Bodhidharma says, "Then your mind is pacified already." There's a comment here by a monk, Mumon. And the comment says, "That broken-toothed old Hindu, Bodhidharma, came thousands of miles over the sea from India to China as if he had something wonderful. He is like raising waves without wind. After he remained years in China, he had only one disciple, and that one lost his arm and was deformed. Alas, ever since he has had brainless disciples." And then a poem. "Why did Bodhidharma come to China? For years, monks have discussed this. All the troubles that have followed since came from that teacher and disciple." This is a great story. There's a whole kind of tradition in Buddhism and Zen that is like, don't revere the teacher. And they say, they even say, if you find the Buddha on the street, kill him. This, he starts off by calling him that broken-toothed old Hindu, Bodhidharma. If we ignore all that part of it, there's a very nice kind of interaction between the teacher and the student, where the student says, "Pacify my mind." And then he says, "If you bring it, I'll pacify it." And the student's like, "I can't find it." And the teacher says, "Then I pacify it for you." And this is kind of the idea in meditation. You might find yourself like searching for thoughts, but if you can't find them, that means that your mind is already pacified. That's great. If you just sit for long enough, it'll happen automatically. You don't have to do anything else. But part of the story, they say, is this student came and stood outside for days in the snow, and Bodhidharma wouldn't pay him any notice until he cut off his arm and gave it to Bodhidharma as a sign of, this is how much I want to practice. For sure, this monk, the stories say that he had one arm. Whether he took the arm off himself or lost it some other way, he had one arm. And that's why the students of Shaolin bow with only one hand like this. You know, when we bow, we make the right hand a fist and we cover it with the left. But in Shaolin, they all bow this way, as the first student did. And that's a pretty cool story. The last that I'll say is from the end of Bodhidharma's time at Shaolin. The first Zen patriarch, Bodhidharma, brought Zen to China from India in the 6th century. According to his biography, recorded in the year 1004 by the Chinese teacher Dogen, after 9 years in China, Bodhidharma wished to go home and gathered his disciples about him to test their apperception. One of the students, Dofuku, said, "In my opinion, truth is beyond affirmation or negation, for this is the way it moves." Bodhidharma replied, "You have my skin." The nun Soji said, "In my view, it is like Ananda's sight of the Buddha land, seen once and forever." Bodhidharma answered, "You have my flesh." Doiku said, "The 4 elements of light, airiness, fluidity, and solidity are empty. And the 5 skandhas are no things. In my opinion, no thing, i.e. spirit, is reality." Bodhidharma said, "You have my bones." Finally, Eka, Huiku, the disciple, bowed before the master and remained silent. Bodhidharma said, "You have my marrow." So this seems to point to the idea that the most important teaching is no mind or silence. We just sit. There can be no more impressive philosophy or thing to learn besides that. Just sit in silence. So if Bodhidharma came all the way thousands of miles and spent 9 years at Shaolin Temple to teach that, then we can spend about 25 minutes doing it tonight. Sit comfortably. So I'll go over some details of posture, especially if we're going to do a longer meditation. We want to have good posture. So if you're going to sit kneeling like this in Seiza, this is great. Make sure your back is straight. If you are sitting cross-legged, make sure that you don't have your knees sticking up because your legs will fall asleep during a longer meditation. The actual posture of your back is important, so you want to roll your shoulders back and relax. You can have your hands here together with one hand on top of the other or in some other position, or simple, just have your hands palm up at your hips like this. If your hands start to slide down, then your back slouches, you're going to lose your posture, you're going to fall asleep. And we try to find a position where we can sit still. So if you absolutely have to move, try to do it quickly and quietly and then come back to this position. But my Sifu always described moving in meditation as like hitting the reset button. It's like I've done all this work and I've got this nice deep kind of state of consciousness, and then I move, and then I'm thinking about the itch, I'm feeling my arm, all of this stuff is a distraction. So sit as still as you can, and if you move, just come back to this position. You can go ahead and hit the lights, ma'am. So from here, we're going to close the eyes, Mokto, spine straight, eyes upturned. So you think about looking at the point between the eyebrows, but you don't want to have your eyes crossed. So you just have a gentle raise of your eyes. If you're having a hard time getting that position with your eyes, one of the things I like to do is just visualize the spot on my forehead, basically in the middle of the forehead. And just by imagining that spot, the eyes will naturally raise up a little bit. If that is giving you crossed eyes, then you can open your eyes and look out in the distance at a spot that's a little bit above your head. And then you can close your eyes again, and your eyes should be in that position, but they're not crossed anymore. If you find yourself having a headache during meditation, it means you're probably crossing your eyes. So from here, we'll start with a breathing exercise. We'll start with all the breath out. Breathe in through the nose. Hold it at the top for a few seconds. And breathe out. So breathe in from the belly, through the nose, about 5 seconds. Hold it at the top for about 3 seconds. And exhale. In. Hold. Out. In. Hold. Out. In. Hold. Out. Last breath. In. Hold. Out. So now just let the breath move in by itself. And let the breath move out by itself. If your mind wanders, just gently bring it back to the breath. Try to stay focused on that sensation of the breathing as much as possible. And if your mind continues to wander and you need to go back to counting the breaths, you can do that. But a great way to let go of thought is just by labeling it in your mind by saying thought. You recognize the thought, you label it without judgment, without attachment, just say thought, and then let it go. Come back to the breath. Do that as many times as you can over the next few minutes.